Hey, McGinn, welcome back for our latest read aloud. This is the last one of the week. And because Hispanic Heritage Month started, I figured this would be a really good time for us to do a read aloud about the life of the first Latina Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor. So here is the book that is called I Am Sonia Sotomayor. I am Sonia Sotomayor. In Spanish, that's Yo soy Sonia Sotomayor. I was born in New York City and my family came from Puerto Rico. I learned to speak Spanish before I spoke English. My family called me Aji, which means hot pepper, because I was always jumping around and finding trouble. My mother used to say she learned to walk at 7 months and ran the very same day. Even when my mother or my abuelita, my grandmother, dressed me up, my clothes would get wrinkled. Ribbons never stayed in my hair. You're already a mess. What should we do with her? There's nothing wrong with her, just a lot of energy. One time I got my head stuck in a bucket while I was trying to hear what my voice sounded like inside. Sonia, what have you done? Hello in there. I also loved making up games, jousting like a knight with my little brother on my back. One of my favorite places was my abuelita's apartment. Entering her home was like going straight to Puerto Rico. Once a month at abuelita's, my mom and my aunts would make sofrito, a spicy sauce. As they chopped peppers, onions, and tomatoes, I'd sneak to eat them right out of the blender. Sonia, what have you done now? The grown-ups played a lot of music, and games too, like dominoes. One of my favorite moments was when everyone would go quiet, and my abuelita would perform for us. She looked so glamorous. We'd all be mesmerized as she read one of her favorite Puerto Rican poems by Jose Gautier Benitez. I understood what the poem meant. I had so many dreams. To know it, you need to see it. In dreams from afar, to learn how to love it, you need to leave it. When I was little, I used to imagine myself as the hero of my favorite book series, Nancy Drew, Girl Detective. Nancy was a master at doing puzzles, and no matter what got in her way, she could figure things out. She lived in a big house and solved crimes with her dad. Since he was a lawyer, he'd give her the best hints. I can't wait to be a detective when I grow up. In my neighborhood, dreams like that rarely came true. There weren't any detectives who looked like me. This is where I grew up. It's the Bronx, a neighborhood in New York City. Pretty different from Nancy Drew, huh? We didn't live in a fancy house. We lived in a small apartment. My mother was a nurse, so I knew some Puerto Rican nurses, but there was only one Puerto Rican doctor. At the stores where we shopped, there were a lot of Puerto Rican workers, but few managers or owners, and even fewer lawyers and detectives. It wasn't that my Puerto Rican neighborhood didn't work hard. People aren't poor because they're lazy. My mother worked long hours to pay our bills, but sometimes where you live affects the kind of opportunities you have. If you live in a nice neighborhood, like Nancy Drew, you can go to a school like this. That looks nice and safe. But if you live in a neighborhood like mine, you get a school that has fewer supplies and might not be safe. That definitely isn't nice. Welcome to the Bronx. My mom worked extra hours so she could pay to send my brother and me to a more respected school where we would get a better education. But even with a good school, my young life was still pretty complicated. When I was 9 years old, I was diagnosed with diabetes, a disease that means your body keeps too much sugar in your blood. You'll be okay, but you'll have to have a shot every day. I was strong. I could handle it. Something even harder happened that year. My father died. It was like an earthquake in my life. My world started to change and felt scary. One of the ways I found comfort was doing what you're doing right now, reading. I loved books. Books gave me a rocket ship, not only around the world, but through the world. This book that a doctor lent me was my favorite. It was filled with stories of Greek gods and heroes. In that book, I learned that my name was a version of Sophia, which meant wisdom. Those days were hard for my mom. She had to pay for 2 kids all by herself, but it didn't slow her down. She ordered us a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica, and when it arrived, it was like an early Christmas. Each book was so heavy, it was like we lived in a library. The books were expensive too. My mom struggled to make the payments. But with the encyclopedia, the world expanded before me in thousands of new directions. There was another reason why my world continued to change: my teachers. Every teacher has the power to inspire kids This one realized I loved to compete and win. That's Mrs. Riley. She'd put a gold star on the blackboard when you did something well. Nice job, Sonia. You too, Donna. 1 gold star for each. I wanted those stars. I wanted to collect them all. The first time I got an A grade on my report card, I made a promise to myself. I would add 1 more A each time. With grades like that, I was on my way to becoming a detective. Did that mean everything was suddenly easy? Not in my neighborhood. Where we lived, if you didn't lock up your bike, it usually got stolen. And if you walked down the wrong alley, someone might try to beat you up. Once, I found my little brother surrounded by bullies, so I walked over to protect him. If you're going to beat him up, you've got to beat me up too. My sister is as tough as nails. So my friends, that gets us about halfway through this book on Sonia Sotomayor. We will continue our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, and we'll read the rest of her story when we rejoin next week. I hope everyone has an awesome weekend. Enjoy it, McGinn. Take care.